Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Garth, Chief Strategy Officer at Majesco, and you're listening to the Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast series. Follow along as I interview the best and brightest leaders in the insurance industry and Insurtech landscape to bring you the latest in digital transformation, innovation, industry trends, challenges, and opportunities, as well as next-gen technologies. We use our experience to anticipate what's next without losing sight of what's now. Stay tuned to find out your next now. Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of Future of Insurance podcast series. And I got to tell you, I am so excited to have Megan Kuczynski from Insurtech Insights joining me today. Megan and I have gotten to know each other the last few years. You get us together and we can't stop talking. So Megan, welcome.
Thank you so much, Denise. And, I have to say, you are one of my very first friends in the industry. I think it was around 5 years ago, 4.5 or 5 years ago, I was new and you were one of my first just sort of industry calls. You probably don't remember, but
I've heard that from a few other people that when they came into the industry, I'm one of the first ones they met and I kind of like welcomed them in and I don't know. It's just, I guess I forget those things, Megan, but I'm so glad that we did.
Absolutely. Me too.
One of the things I like to do, because even though I think the industry is really a small community that everybody knows everybody, I find that people don't. And so what would be really great is to have you give a little bit of background about yourself, your role at ITI, and the other things that you do. In particular, our partnership, as we've worked really closely together from an ITI perspective and providing input. So that would be great.
I have over 20 years of experience in the global B2B media industry. And I've always focused on emerging technologies. And I look at conferences and trade shows as media in 3D, if you will. We provide content, we do everything in person. It's an extension of all print, digital, everything else. And I love the business. So I have really focused in on insurance these past 5 years. I helped Clarion Events acquire ITC. I was part of the team that brought in ITC into Clarion. I loved working with the founder, Jay Weintraub, who's infamous as well. I learned a lot from him. And so I helped bring that in and scale it. And then the past nearly 2 years, I've been with Insurtech Insights, which is much more of a media company. We put out content nearly every single day. And we have a reach of over 500,000 now globally. And we have conferences in Hong Kong, in London, and in New York City. And so I'm really focused on helping them build the ecosystem here in the United States. And I'm also the author of Insurtech Talk for Modern Insurance Magazine. It's a bi-monthly series of interviews, and you and I collaborate there as well because you're on the editorial review board. But what I will say about the partnership, we've been partners at a few different companies now. You've been a sponsor and you were a gold sponsor this past year, really, really dominant presence at Insurtech Insights. And I really look at you as more than just a sponsor, though. I look at you and the team at Majesco as a content partner as well. You help curate, you advise, you brought a phenomenal keynote panel to this past show in New York with Microsoft, with Tokyo Marine, Manish, President and Chief Product Officer of Majesco. You really showed real world use cases of GenAI applied on a daily basis. It was riveting, standing room only. So I feel like we have multiple layers to the partnership.
Yeah, I think we're always just kind of running ideas off of each other and collaborating because while we want to really benefit Majesco, at the end of the day, we also want to benefit the industry from a Majesco standpoint because I think it's good for everybody.
Absolutely. I do too.
You have a really unique view with your work with ITI and actually the broader industry for both L&A&H and P&C. And I want to kind of talk about some of the hot topics as you see them in the industry and your different roles. Mm-hmm. So first up is this shift to predict and prevent risk operational model rather than paying the claim. And we know that we've had to pay a lot of claims the last few years. While P&C gets a lot of focus about this, and a number of the big industry organizations are really kind of pushing this, particularly the institutes, you have some really great insights for L&A&H that I don't think we talk about it enough on that part of the segment. Share what you're seeing and the opportunity ahead for insurers to improve customer relationships and outcomes.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, healthcare, life sciences as well, personal passion of mine. I actually founded an event 18 years ago called the Integrative Healthcare Symposium about functional medicine, holistic healthcare that's still going on to this day. And I also ran a very large division for Reed Elsevier for Reed Exhibitions. I ran their healthcare and life sciences division. And we produced a major convention for oncologists. And when I went to LIMRA was an amazing annual conference this past October. I really kind of dove into predict and prevent as it relates to health and the life insurance side. Focused in on a company called Grail. They're considered a health tech company, but they had a major presence in the content and at ITI. And what Grail does is they screen for 50 different cancers with one blood draw. In traditional healthcare, we only screen for the big five, and usually we screen too late when there's invasion, when it's spread. So what Grail does is they can screen for 50 different cancers and detect the markers before they grow and become cancer, or early stage when they can be cured. It is a revolutionary company. Fortune magazine named them one of the top companies changing the world. And why does that matter to the life insurer? I'll just mention a couple cases. So Mark Jaguar, the CEO of Munich Re Life and Health, formed a relationship with Grail exclusive about 2.5 years ago. And then all life insurers are following suit and forging partnerships with Grail. The latest would be John Hancock and Mass Mutual. And so, first of all, what do we all want? For humanity, we want to live longer, happier, and healthier lives, right? And companies like Grail are paving the way for that. From a commercial standpoint, it also extends the life of the policyholder. That's okay to talk about that as well. So in my view, it's win-win. And I just see more and more and more of that happening. There's a lot more predictive genetic testing and things of that going on. The other thing I want to talk about, and again, I picked this up at LIMRA, John Hancock talked about their Vitality program. I think it's really amazing when you can engage the policyholder to really take command of their health and make it fun. And there's a gamification quality to it. But if you are able to, make some changes to be happier and healthier and extend your life, that benefits everybody as well. So I just see a lot of those things. Optimity is another great example. The gamification and engagement of the policyholder. I really am passionate about that and following and highlighting those types of companies.
It's great that LNA&H is getting into that because we really don't talk about it enough on that side. You buy life insurance because you're going to die. Well, maybe if you live longer, that's a good thing for both sides, the other one that obviously is top of mind is climate change, especially with all of the cat events that we've had the last few years. More cat events, more billion-dollar cat events in the U.S. We're now seeing hurricane seasons well underway. We're seeing the fires, et cetera. Spending a lot of time in this area too, and you have some interesting insights. Talk about the impact of banks and what they're doing now for climate stress tests around property and mortgages and loans, and how this impacts insurers. And then I'd like you to kind of shift and say, how do we focus in on mitigation then? What do insurers need to kind of think differently?
For sure. That's a great question. And you're right. I've already written 2 complete issues for the magazine as it relates to climate risk. And my favorite word is resilience, climate resilience. As it relates to the banks, this is all very new. As you pointed out, Denise, that like mortgages and loans, they're all at risk, when you have these extreme weather events. And this is all new and people are scrambling to figure it out. So now the federal government has mandated that banks, there's been these mandates around the world, in Japan, in the UK, but this is new for the United States. The risk tests, stress tests are not new, but climate stress tests are new. So they want to know what the risk is and what the mitigation strategies are. What I believe, I'm seeing it, it's a dawn of new age of technology for the insurance sector and for the banking sector. Whether it's a geospatial, NatCat solution, flood mapping, satellite, to really hone in on where these extreme weather events are going to happen. NASA is in on it. They have a whole solution going on with IBM, where the extreme events are going to happen. That's the predict. And then what sort of mitigation can the insurers provide the safety net? But I had a call with a CIO, and there's also new job titles, Chief Resilience Officer for New York.
I love it.
Me too. And I had a great conversation with the CIO of Miami-Dade County. They're adopting these technologies. but they're still not this great partnership with the insurers. So you see, like they just held a Miami-Dade insurance summit. I'm sending people that I know to it. FEMA had an insurance summit at their headquarters in Washington, D.C. So it's sort of like everyone's like, we've got to address it from an insurance standpoint. So I feel like there's confusion, there's panic, there are a lot of moving pieces, there's problems to solve for. And that's where the technology is coming to the forefront.
I think the other interesting thing is on that kind of the mitigate standpoint. That's something that we've often talked about here at Majesco, because from a loss control standpoint, when we acquired Unilent, which is the dominant loss control solution out there in the marketplace, and a lot of the engineering firms use that to support the insurers, it can do some really amazing assessments from a property standpoint, because a lot of people have always used people on the ground. They've limited what they've been able to do because of the cost of being able to put adjusters out there to kind of work with it. And that's where technology really comes into play, because we've got the capability to leverage to do self-surveys. Insureds can do self-surveys, and you can use a mobile phone with video, and we can actually, with AI, actually look at those and tag everything and be able to do the assessment. And it allows insurers to do a broader set of their portfolio in these risk areas. So they really know where they have the risk. And so when they're going to get reinsurance, they know exactly what it is, because those reinsurers are going to want that as well.
That's a great example. Do you remember those horrible fires in Maui? The buildings, there was like 3 buildings that withstood them because of the materials. So there's a novel, really amazing new company called Fora. They were actually, they were at ITI, and they do these assessments too. And they take it a step further, and they have a mitigation consultation practice. So here's the assessment. You're at risk for wildfires. However, you might change the material of a roof or take away all the brush and the foliage that's in this perimeter, and that can affect your policy for the favorable. Or the reverse, it could take the policy away or like make it more expensive. So I see a lot more of that happening.
Yeah, and that allows insurers to really kind of target and really personalize underwriting based upon the actual property itself versus the general area, which is going to be a benefit for a lot of people and a reason why they want to invest in that.
I totally agree. And then when you think about climate, it affects the whole ecosystem, even going into A and H. Remember when we had the smoke apocalyptic sky in New York, and think about what that was doing to our lungs, kids from school. So there's that. Their flooding can take lives, take buildings. So it really kind of affects the whole value chain.
I think for insureds, I remember the fires in Boulder, Colorado a few years ago. And it burned down so many homes and businesses in that area. And I remember reading an article, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, that a large percentage of those homes were underinsured because of the valuations had gone up pretty substantially in the last 5 years. But then the cost of materials had also gone up to kind of do the rebuild or replace. And as a result, they were underinsured and they weren't able to get full value back for their homes. That's a travesty. And that's where, for an industry, we get a black eye then when those things happen, because we haven't done those proactive things that you're talking about.
Right. Exactly. That's another great example for sure. Yeah. I was just going to say it's something that it's only for the West Coast. We hear about Florida and California everywhere, but it's really a global problem. The hail problem in the Midwest. Like we don't think about that every day. You think about the hurricanes and the secondary perils, but a hail would be a secondary peril.
We experienced that about 6 years ago. We had this massive hailstorm in Omaha where I live. And I woke up, I had just gone to bed and I heard this noise and I was like, what the heck is happening? I look out and we've got really large size hail hitting the house. Lo and behold, it destroyed our shake roof. It popped all of our windows, pillow windows, the seals. And by the end of it, when the adjuster came out, it was $140,000 worth of damage because of that hail. And it wasn't even baseball size hail. This was like quarter size hail. But the way it came down and how much came down was just atrocious. When we went in and we decided to redo the roof, we had to redo the roof. This roof that is like rubber. And it looks like slate, but it's rubber. It has a 100-year warranty. And it's when hail hits it, it'll bounce off. What it did is it lowered my premium.
Yeah.
So, because
Yeah.
I had something that would go against, that whole kind of scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great example. And I think we're going to see more and more of that.
I agree. The third area that we talked about ahead of time, obviously the hottest topic, Gen AI.
The
And
hottest topic.
yeah, the hottest topic. There's been this rapid adoption of AI machine learning for a number of years. But now Gen AI has really what I call turned data and analytics from a long-term strategy of incremental investment into a
Yeah.
near-term reality. It's a must-have, and it's upending and really accelerating a focus on advanced data and analytics. What are
Mhm.
you seeing, and where is this gaining a lot of interest in the impact in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. I covered a lot of this, and you'll read about it in the next issue of Insurtech Talks, of course. Interviewed a couple of your panelists. I actually took some notes that I'll share with you. You'll remember. But I asked my panelists to respond to the International Insurance Society. They published their 2024 Global Priorities Survey. And for the very first time, and I was actually surprised it was the first time. I thought it would come up before then, but AI was cited as a top priority in the technology and innovation category. In the survey, the commentary, they attribute it to the rise of executives reporting that their companies are not prepared, they're unprepared for AI's rapid development. So I just asked some of the panelists to respond to that. People concurred. Talked to Sandeep from Microsoft, or a fintech from Microsoft, who was on your panel at ITI.
Yeah.
And I really loved his advice because it made it not so scary. He broke it into run, walk, crawl. And he wrote a whole article about this. And I just asked him to give me the highlights, but start now with a low risk run. So get some quick wins and start, using the tools and build some momentum. And then move on to the measurable impact of the walk phase. The walk phase, adopt a data-driven approach, prioritize projects with tangible ROI, build confidence within the team on the transformative power of AI. And then really the third is build for the future, which he calls the crawl space. And it's the reverse of what you'd think.
It is.
Build for the future in the crawl space, which is where it is resource intensive, but is where you can create unique solutions that set you apart. I just moderated a webinar for LIMRA and commissioned by Equisoft. Much of the same sort of themes. Like you got to get in the game, and really focus on the integrity of your data, right? Number one. I really loved how Sandeep broke that down.
It is different. It's a reverse what you would normally think.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that there's so many people that Gen AI, I know one of the things that I have been hearing is how it's really gotten up to not just the executive level, but it's at the board level now. What are
Yeah.
people actually going to be able to do? And I think one of the things, Megan, that I saw at ITI, I loved this term that came up in one of the sessions, the algorithmic economy. I thought it was so interesting because it really puts an emphasis around AI and Gen AI that we are now moving into this phase where these technologies are going to be a crucial, integral component of every business. And if you don't have that kind of foundation of a strategy and a foundation from a technology standpoint, it's going to be very, very difficult to compete. And I think that's a big thing for people that really need to think about that. I love that term.
Oh, I do too. I just wrote it down. That's amazing. That's really amazing. I think, going back to the walk phase too, like
Yep.
Bob Nick from Tokyo Marine on your panel, they did a survey across all business lines for those that are using Microsoft Copilot, and the productivity savings was between 16 and 28 minutes a day. I mean, that's really transformative too for productivity. Think about all the other applications for creativity and things we can create leveraging it.
Yep, I know we're starting to measure the use cases that we built into policy billing and claims and loss control and all of our solutions. We're seeing anywhere between 70 to 90% decrease in time. That can correlate to 10 to 20 times productivity. So as we continue to build those things out and it goes across, entire workflows, you're really going to be able to drive down operational costs and unit costs that will be able to make your products more competitive, that will allow you to grow. So there's this whole financial aspect to it that people, I think CFOs, COOs, and COs are really going to gravitate onto.
I totally agree. 1,000%. I think more on that survey was the 50 plus year olds that make up a lot of the insurance industries, or aging workforce that might be looking for retirement. There's like a fear, we're not skilled in it. Everybody has to get skilled in it.
So the fourth area that you and I talked about ahead of time is really around innovation and Insurtech. You've been involved in the Insurtech area since Clarion kind of bought ITC and grew into that the last 4 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. And you large range of organizations that are part of Insurtech, from startups to established companies to insurers and reinsurers and MGAs and all the whole thing. Do you see this new phase of Insurtech emerging? The first era back in when it first kind of came onto the scene was about 2016. It was really heavily focused on front end distribution. And what do you see? How is Insurtech emerging? How is it maturing? And what do you think this next era of focus is going to be? And what can we learn from the first era to apply into the second era?
That's a great question. So I'll really kind of, when I showed up on the scene, my first keynote, it was Lisa Polina interviewing Evan Greenberg from the CEO of Chubb. And then there was definitely us versus them a little bit. I'm the incumbent, and then these insurtechs are all coming around to disrupt me or maybe put me out of business or whatever. And I feel like that's all calmed down. I feel like we're in an era of collaboration. Build, buy, partner is a theme that across the board, across the ecosystem that I see. I feel like, there was a lot of hype, a lot of who's going to be the next unicorn. Now, certainly on the investor side, they want workhorses. They want a workhorse, unicorn status, whatever. We want to see profitability. I feel like, I've seen the waves. I think it was 2021 was the record year of funding. It was just this hype, and you remember the term in the .com era, irrational exuberance. And I felt like there was a lot of that. And now I feel like there's more discrimination. There's more focus on ROI. I don't see any slowdown on innovation, particularly in AI and GenAI. I mean, I just feel like that is the fire that's going to propel the industry forward.
We're really looking for insurtechs that can actually grow the business profitably, and with that profit be able to invest into the technology to further kind of do that. Instead of just throwing money at it and growth at all costs. As you said, it's really reliable growth because you want them to stay around. If they're growing at all costs and then they don't have any profit to invest back into the business, that's not good either.
I totally agree. 1,000%.
Yeah. Finally, the last one is around the shift in employees who have different expectations of work. They want the companies they work for to stand for something. They expect a different level of technology use, and they also expect diversity. And I know you spend a lot of time discussing this shift, and particularly the focus around diversity and women in insurance. What shifts and changes do you see happening, and how do they need to accelerate, and how will this impact insurance and really enhance insurance?
That's a great question. So in my years here in the insurance industry, I would have women leadership forums, but they just kind of felt like a sideshow. You know what I mean? Like, we're the DEI panel. And I felt like it was important enough having female leaders speak, inspire, to put it on the main stage. And so going to be a regular part of Insurtech Insights where I have C-suite. We're going to have to get you up there, Denise. I have Tracy Kempton, President, Nationwide's Personal Lines, Sabrina Hart, CEO of Munich Re Specialty, Margot Giles, kind of representing the Insurtech side, CEO of Iris. And I just wanted a forum where we can ask the hard questions and have the hard conversations. So, one of the questions I asked them, and this came from a very senior woman in a technology company. She just said, all the men on my team, they're always asking for raises and more money. Rarely do the women. And I just asked everyone to respond to that because there's a fear to ask for more money. You know what I mean? It's the same job. It's the same work. It's the same, high caliber of talent. And so, their answers were superb, confidence, go in there and ask. And so, but that's a hard question. People are uncomfortable discussing that. Why is it that only 2% of all VC funding goes to female founders? That's an astonishing. It's less than 2% now. And just have those hard conversations, because conversations leads to action, action leads to outcomes. personally very passionate about, advancing women in the insurance sector. And as women leaders, when we do see salary disparity, we can correct it.
And we do have a lot of really talented women in this industry that are starting to emerge and really make names for themselves, which is really fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, how I like to wrap up, Megan, is that I like to ask this question of all of my podcast participants. If you could use one word or phrase to describe the future of insurance, what would it be and why?
That's a great question. And I'll use it. So it's one of my favorite words in life. It so applies to our conversation today, Denise, and it's resilience. And so, you could put risk and resilience, but I'll just use the word resilience because it goes to, identifying problems. It goes to really using technology to create resiliency strategies, just as we discussed in climate mitigation efforts. And it can translate into your own health and wealth and well-being and longevity. And so that can apply across the whole value chain. And it's just truly one of my favorite words. It's an inspiring word.
I love it too, because you need resilience on your life journey because you never know the ups and the downs, and it's all about resilience.
For sure. 1,000%.
Well, Megan, as always, it's always a pleasure visiting with you and talking with you. You've really brought to the table some really interesting perspectives that we've never talked about on this podcast series. So I really appreciate it. And we look forward to my continued friendship with you, but also our continued partnership with Majesco and ITI.
Sounds great. It was really an honor, Denise. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's it for this week's episode of Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast. Subscribe to our market-leading podcast series available wherever you get your podcast from. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in the next time.